All right.
Where were you on in Frozen? Forest
Good to go.
When you go up on
All right.
Hill and you drop over the top
Yeah,
down.
down in Huckleberry.
All right. So ready for the
Oh yeah, sorry.
aquatics?
No,
Oh,
it's
no
fine.
problem. Yeah, the aquatics part of everything.
Yeah. So, like I said, I'm Matt Larson. I'm the fish biologist here at the park. A lot of this presentation will be fish focused, but happy to go and have a follow-up discussion or conversation about all the different projects that our aquatics group as a whole does within the park. That picture is a picture of one of our main fish species here at the park, at least one of the main ones that we manage for, which is a bull trout. It has trout in the name, but it's actually a part of the char family. And a lot of our management and projects are kind of based around bull trout. But before I get into the projects, let's give a little lay of the land. This map right here is what we call a drainage map. It's showing the 9 kind of distinct drainages within Mount Rainier. The stream habitat that's highlighted in red is all the critical habitat for bull trout within the park. And I'll go a little bit into why that bull trout has that distinction. But yeah, let's just look at the overall park boundaries and kind of the drainages maps. As you can see, a lot of the drainages within the park are headwatered on the mountain. If you think of it in more of a vertical sense, we're higher in elevation. A lot of the drainages are glacier fed, so that kind of provides a kind of constant cold, clear, well not clear, but cold influence in a lot of our water systems within the park. And just note that a lot of the drainages we're at the very top of the drainages, so biologically speaking, there's not as much input going into these systems. You kind of think as you move down the gradient of the drainage and down the gradient of elevation, as you are lower and lower in elevation and lower in the drainage, you have more overall inputs into the system. And inputs meaning mainly organic carbon material, and that's kind of the main driver of aquatic systems. Mainly just food and available energy for the different aquatic organisms within the different rivers and systems. The Ohanaka-Pakash system is not glacier fed, and the Cowlitz and the Ohanaka-Pakash are the 2 systems that drain into the Columbia, and the rest are draining into Puget Sound. Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about some of the dams that we have within the region. Again, those glaciers provide an opportunity of kind of a constant water source throughout the year. So if you're making a hydroelectrical dam, it's a pretty good opportunity, right? You're going to always consistently have a water source and input to provide energy to then make your power. Also, it's close to the urban core of the Puget Sound region. So just some of the dams that we have on our systems within Mount Rainier. Red dots are going to be dams. So again, on the White River we have Mountain, Puyallup we have Electron, Nisqually we have 3, Yalma, Grand, and Alder, and then the Cowlitz and Ohana we have 4 several ones. One drainage I showed before but haven't mentioned is the Carbon River. That's the only river within the park that doesn't have a dam on it. It does have a really large natural waterfall, but it's our only river system that is undammed within the park. Let's introduce some of the fish species within the park. So I've kind of broken them up between native and non-native fish species. Our native fish species, kind of our big three, are going to be rainbow trout, cutthroat trout, and bull trout. Again, they all have trout in the name, but the bull trout are going to actually be part of a different family, part of the char family. I like to think of them as a dark-bodied fish with light spots, whereas our trouts are a light-bodied fish with dark spots. We do have, technically we don't have any critical habitat for steelhead within the park. There has been some spawning surveys in the spring that have previously been done. They've done in the past. A lot of the one of our great co-collaborators within the region, the Puyallup tribe of Indians, they do a lot of steelhead surveys within the park. The park boundaries are just a little bit too high in elevation and gradient for kind of the spawning habitat, so we don't necessarily do any steelhead spawning surveys in the spring. But just note that they're within the region, and a fish like Chandler was saying, wildlife don't really care about park boundaries. Fish, they don't care about park boundaries. They're going to be moving up and down the drainage as things kind of melt out and open up. The cutthroat trout, we have several species within the park. Some introduced and some native. The coastal cutthroat is going to be the native species within the park. The other species that we are right on the border of the distribution and range of it is called the West Slope cutthroat. We have found some of those within the Hanapakash drainage, but we believe those were like from a stocking event, not necessarily like a natural distribution. We also have a Yellowstone cutthroat, and that's within the Hanapakash drainage, and that's again a previous stocking event.
When you say a stocking event, do you mean a one-shot deal where they're all going to, by the end of the year they're gone, they're not a steady population, or were they...
It depends on the type of body of water. So like, for instance, we've had some illegal stocking events within the park, and that the fish have been stocked, but the alpine lake just doesn't have great spawning habitat for those fish species, so there just isn't any recruitment. The three different lakes have been illegally stocked that we know of, but one of the what I call stocking event was they stocked all females. So again, like when I say stocking event, it's more just like a time someone put fish in a body of water. Previously, when the park was actually stocking fish within the boundaries, that would be something like an annual or biannual or every 5 kind of years of planting those fish populations. A lot of those bodies of water were fishless for a reason, right? Like there's poor, overall like carrying capacity of the system, or poor spawning habitat for recruitment. So in order to kind of maintain those populations, especially as a recreation opportunity, you're going to have to go in and stock it multiple years. So a lot of it was kind of just throw it out the wall and see what sticks. And a lot of it was based on, access to road and trails, and having the ability to mainly have access and amount of effort to then plant those fish.
Thank you.
Yeah. These are some of the other native fish species that are kind of within our drainages, but we don't necessarily see a lot of within the park. Again, we're just a little bit higher in elevation. So we have, mainly the 3 types of salmon that are kind of like in the, I would say like the border areas of our park, Chinook, coho, and pink. We do have a large pink run within the White River. And if any of you guys been to like the Silver Springs or area, that's like just right outside by Crystal, that's a really, really great viewing opportunity for pinks. When the pinks come, they just carpet the whole area. There's bald eagles going in and snagging them, and it's like
Oh, cool.
thousands and thousands of individuals all lining up on that creek and digging reds and fighting for space.
When would that be?
So that would be in the fall. Pinks down in the lower 48 are a odd cycle. Typically they're a 2-year cycle for returning. In Alaska it's an even year, so next year there'll be a large spawning population that will return kind of in that lower White River area. And Silver Spring, Silver Creek is a great opportunity, just right off of 410, where the bridge and culvert is. If you park on the side of the road and then just walk down to the White River, they're all stacked up in there. You can smell them. There's so many. It's very distinct.
Bit up from that, but is where the gravel pit, or not the gravel pit, you know that pull out on 410, the gravel pile, sorry.
Gravel pile. Is it
Yeah.
within the park boundary?
Just barely.
The Silver
place
Springs is
sketchy
outside of
looking.
the park boundary. So it's
Would they go up further in? would that be
we haven't seen any of any pink spawning activity. Again, since as you like higher and higher in elevation, the salmon utilize a little bit lower in elevation and gradient of their spawning habitat. Within the White River, we mainly see a bull trout. They have really like focused in on that, especially the side tributaries of the White. Every year we have an annual survey, and they really utilize that cold, clear water habitat for their spawning areas and where they dig their reds. I think, do we see a world in which pinks or other salmon species, could expand their habitat within the park? Sure. We have actually seen coho spawning in some of our lower tributaries. We get a lot of juvenile coho each spring. So they're certainly spawning somewhere in the park or migrating up into the park in the spring. We just don't have any consistent documented reds for any of the salmon species.
So odd years in the fall.
Yeah, and mainly pinks. Again, with like the Chinook and coho, I'm sure they are spawning in the park. We just haven't had any documentation of like actual reds of individuals sitting on reds. We've seen different coho individuals within the park, but haven't found any actual reds. And a lot of our spawning surveys are really focused in on bull trout because that's our largest kind of returning spawning population within the park. But like I said, one of our co-collaborators, Puyallup Tribe of Indians, they have a lot more expansive and lower on the drainage for spawning surveys, so they see a lot of the salmon species. The biologist Eric Marks has I'm assuming his annual report is like public information, but he puts out a really nice, it's really, it's a booklet, but he does a really good job of kind of introducing each individual spawning reach and each individual area that they survey, and has a really good summary of a little bit more lower drainage and a little bit more salmon and bull trout focus. Eric Marks is his name. But yeah, so we have those 3 salmon species that are kind of like on that borderlands of the park and park boundaries. Mountain whitefish is another one that again is like kind of lower in the drainage but present. And these would be our 2 non-native fish species, the brook trout and then the kokanee salmon. Again, brook trout has trout in the name, but is a char, and it's part of the char family. And it's definitely the fish species that we have done a lot of our fish management and removal going after that brook trout. They're in a variety of different rivers and creeks and streams within the park, and then several different alpine lakes. Kokanee are a little bit more focused on the Nisqually drainage. and associated with like Alder Lake. We don't do any like spawning surveys within the Nisqually. I'm sure they're going up probably around the mouth of the Nisqually each fall and spawning, but we don't necessarily like have any management or field projects associated with that fish population. We did do a eDNA project, which stands for environmental DNA, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later in the presentation, but that would be a way to kind of see a little bit more established distribution to a lot of these non-native fish species. And depending on what those results will be, we might have a change in management practices. Kokanee are also stocked within Mowich Lake, or were stocked within Mowich Lake. I have never seen one, but if anyone hears of someone catching one, I would love to talk to them. I've never seen a kokanee in Mowich Lake, but apparently they still may be there. Yeah, and then why do fish matter? Fish are, a great, almost like a canary in the coal mine aspect to aquatic ecosystems. Again, and just overall environmental, environmental health. Again, if you're thinking about like a drainage, all of the runoff and all of the inputs are eventually coalescing into streams, and one of the organisms that live within those streams are fish. So again, they can be a really good indicator of stream health, and give you a kind of indicator of like the overall drainage health. Again, fish, they do what they want. They cross boundaries. We have that park boundary, but certainly in the last couple of years, they've definitely helped us motivate in establishing different partnerships within the region, whether that's working with Fish and Wildlife Service, working with the Puyallup Tribe of Indians, and really helping us, bridge that gap between different agencies in relation to managing fish species. And then again, within the Pacific Northwest, bull trout, salmon are incredibly ecological, cultural, and economic important species. So yeah, again, some just like a broad overview of some of the projects we do within the park. I'll go a little bit into more detail throughout the presentation. But again, our major goal is to monitor and restore our aquatic ecosystems within the park. That's a picture of us electrofishing at Shenuis Falls, which is within the Carbon River. That was associated with a non-native fish removal that was targeting brook trout within the Carbon River. And a lot of that is associated with our fish management plan, which I'll go into. We do our spawning surveys. We do that annually. That's a project that we, or an effort that we co-do with the Puyallup Tribe of Indians, and mainly focusing on the carbon and the white drainages, and really focusing in on that on those bull trout. In the last couple of years, we've done some eDNA work, which again stands for environmental DNA. I'll explain a little bit of that more further in the presentation. And then also collecting genetic samples to kind of get a better idea of what stocks we have of different species within the park, or if they're truly native or kind of a remnant of stocking efforts. And then additionally, we do a lot of water temperature monitoring throughout the park. So looking at, again, the water temperature throughout the year, similar to the ARUs. It's like a continuous monitoring tool that we deploy in some locations in the spring, or have a download in the spring and then in the fall, to try and get that full annual profile of temperature in the different streams and throughout the park. So yeah, just a little bit of history. Within the Park Service, we've kind of gone from a little bit more recreational focus to conservation focus throughout the years. Within Mount Rainier, through the years, we've stocked over 9 million fish, a vast majority of them being non-native. And we were kind of doing that practice from 1915 all the way up until 1972. Like I was saying before, the different species of cutthroat, West Slope cutthroat was a commonly stocked species, eastern brook trout, and then also a red band rainbow trout. Around 43 different lakes were stocked, and again it was kind of prioritizing recreational opportunities within the park. Now, if you kind of think of just like our overall history of fish resources within the region, right? We had really high quality fish resources and fisheries with our salmon, our Chinook, our coho, right? And giving people an opportunity to catch a fish species that, you know, is not necessarily is non-native, as in like a fish species, you know, that you'd catch on the East Coast, and kind of like pulling at that nostalgia of like, oh, like, you know, I came from the East Coast, I used to catch brook trout as a little kid, like I wanted the opportunity to catch brook trout, you know, locally within the region. So that's again why I think one of the reasons why brook trout was picked as a fish species. You know, they're charismatic, they're char species, so in the fall they have really bright spawning colorization. Bull trout also have the same colorization, but people really like catching their eastern brook trout. So that was kind of one of the reasons why those species were picked. But it had a pretty profound impact on the aquatic environments and ecosystems. So all of our alpine lakes were historically fishless. Again, they're either above a barrier or high or too high up within elevation to support fish populations. And kind of through introducing and stocking those fish species, you're introducing a top predator. So within these alpine lakes, you went from a lot of the salamander species being the top predator and kind of the apex predator within that environment, to now shifting it to a fish species. And again, the overall fish populations have had like varying success of being stocked. A lot of them will run into kind of a energy capacity, and that you will have your annual recruitment of the fish species, but they get stuck in this kind of loop or feedback system, and that the growing season is so short that they can't actually grow big enough to then eat other fish within the environment. So you get a lot of stunted fish populations where you'll get, you know, a lake that's full of thousands and thousands of 5-inch brook trout. And you can tell when this is happening, and that just the overall large population of trout, but also they'll have really large heads, and then almost like a snake-like or really skinny bodies proportional to their head. And that's kind of indicating that it's a really old fish, but hasn't been able to keep up with its growth and the actual available amount of nutrients and energy into the system. Because again, a lot of these lakes are nutrient poor, being so high up within the drainage. So yeah, that's some old fun pictures of some stocking efforts. Again, they're like bringing them up on muleback. Don't know exactly which lake that is, but just within the park, they obviously there's a picture of some folks at Eagle Peak Trail. So yeah, we again like kind of had a shift in the 70s to kind of start managing our park resources with a little bit more conservation and preservation mindset rather than recreational opportunities. Specifically to Mount Rainier, back in, I believe it was 2017, we had the opportunity to kind of review some of our fishing regulations within the park. And we revised and expanded our fishing regulations to kind of improve our conservation message. So we were able to kind of streamline a lot of our regulations to just closing certain drainages or streams, but also just like making it so we have certain regulations within streams and then certain regulations within lakes. Essentially, the main takeaway is that we opened up any sort of like daily limit. Like there's essentially no daily limit on fish populations, right? So trying to encourage anglers and the public to go ahead and remove some of those fish populations to kind of help control their impact and influence on a lot of the alpine lakes within the park. It was a long process, but trying to reach out to different stakeholders and different groups within the public to help develop these fishing regulations. They actually went into like federal code, and I think it's the superintendent code just in February last year. So really establishing those regulations. And again, you don't necessarily need a fishing license to fish within the park. There's no limit on any sort of take within lakes. A lot of our tighter regulations are associated with streams, in which majority of them are either closed or catch and release. We have endangered species within those streams, so you can't necessarily target your bull trout. But if you end up catching those non-native fish species, you're kind of encouraged to go ahead and remove them. Yeah.
So you say you don't necessarily need a license? Does that mean you don't?
You don't need a license.
Okay.
Sorry.
I just want to make sure.
How big of an activity is fishing in the park? Like, I guess I don't recall seeing a lot of poles out there.
Yeah, so a lot of it is targeted to alpine lakes. There's a fishing group that we do a lot of work with called the High Lakers Group. And they are a group of folks that are really focused in those fishing opportunities in alpine lakes. They fish at Mount Rainier, but they fish throughout Forest Service land, state land, and since they're kind of organized, they're able to advocate for certain stocking. Like they still stock different lakes outside of the park for those fishing opportunities. I would say the majority of the folks who I see who are fishing are in the alpine lakes. I don't really ever see fishermen within the streams. I see a couple around Ohana, but I haven't seen any in probably like the last 2 years. I feel like the Ohana kind of has like a boom and bust of fish populations. So as the fishing gets really good and the word kind of gets out, more people go and fish, and then they kind of get a little bit more pressure, and the fish get a little bit more finicky, and then people are like, okay, I'm not gonna drive that hour and a half to get up to the river to fish. So
I've had people ask me at sunrise where they can fish, and I tell them to go down to the Palisades lakes.
Yeah,
because they can't fish in the ones up at sunrise.
No, yeah, Frozen
Right.
Lake's definitely closed.
Yeah, and the other one also, the Shadow.
Shadow, yep. Yeah.
I don't know, is Sunrise Lake also closed, the first lake down, or is that one okay to fish in?
I believe so. I believe that the majority of the ones in and around Sunrise are closed, and a lot of that has to do with water resources, so water supply.
I meant at Sunrise Point, that first lake.
Oh yeah, Sunrise.
Is there on the other Palisades lakes?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. And you can swim in all those too, right?
Yeah. Frozen is just, I believe, one of the ones that you can't. And Shadow also. Yeah, so you can certainly, it's. I do have a list of all the lakes that have fish populations within them, and I'm again happy to pass on any and all of those. A lot of the lakes again are more in a backcountry setting, so it just depends on who it is. You don't want to obviously send someone out on an adventure.
20 miles this way.
Yeah, off trail.
Oh.
But Lake Louise is a great one in the kind of the Paradise area that has a nice population of brook trout. That would be one that I would point people to go check out. If there's any if you have anyone that wants more information or resources, or if you personally want more information and resources, my door is always open. Feel free to email, and I can kind of send you the list of lakes, and I have some that are a little bit closer on trail, off trail, that kind of thing.
And the same with these book lists that Jennifer just brought in. We have those at Sunrise and Paradise, and you can all grab one too.
Oh, good.
Yep. And they go a little bit more in detail of what types and what streams you can fly fish or artificial, all that good stuff.
I'm gonna grab one just so I can
Yeah.
ask any of the questions before I lose track of it.
Yeah.
Are you gonna hand out your card or something with your email on it?
Oh, I can put it up on the screen too.
Okay.
I don't have a card, but happy to
Okay,
put
I
it on
don't
the
even
screen.
know. Maybe people don't do that anymore.
I feel like people do. I should get one
Yeah,
now.
a lot of us just don't have that.
Yeah.
Things change so quick, you never know.
Yeah. So I can go a little bit more into our methods for our non-native fish removal. Again, this was associated with our fisheries management plan. We kind of prioritized 10 different lakes within the park and ranked them. Our lakes that have populations of brook trout and that have a direct connection to spawning habitat of bull trout are the lakes that we've been mainly targeting. So for the past 6 years, we've been targeting an unnamed lake called LP19, which is up off of the West Side Road, and then the Littorals Pond, which is off the White River Road. And those lakes we've been heavily targeting with gill nets. We typically will hike up to a lake, kind of super saturate the lake with gill nets, so set anywhere from usually about 10 nets all around the lake. We'll set those overnight and then come back the following day and check them and process the fish. When we process the fish, we'll take some genetics, we'll take a length, we'll note the sex, we'll open up the stomach and kind of see what sort of aquatic species they've been eating. We'll sex them, whether they're male and female. We'll pop the swim bladders and then actually throw them back into the lake. So those nutrients and that energy that they've been bioaccumulating can be back into the system of the lake. So then, allow all the different macroinvertebrates and amphibians to have another chance and keep those energy and nutrients within the system because they're so nutrient and energy poor.
This is kind of a little bit off topic, but up by Morton, they throw these huge fish into the river 4 times a day in the fall.
Yeah.
And is that the same thing? They're not any good to eat because they're mushy and stuff. They come from the hatchery.
Yeah, so those
they have
would
this
be
big huge tank full of fish that goes in 4 times a day.
Yeah, so those are that's probably a terminal hatchery, and I'm assuming it's a salmon. So
Salmon, yeah, huge fish.
the journey from the ocean all the way up to their spawning grounds is so energy dependent, and so energy intense that salmon, as they're going up to their spawning grounds, once they hit the fresh water, they'll pretty much stop eating, and they will pretty much just regress whether that's their tissue, their scales, and will just kind of slowly, decompose. But essentially, they're taking all the energy within their body to put towards the act of spawning. So I'm assuming since it's a terminal hatchery, they are getting their brood stock for the next year, and then they'll go ahead and I assume you said it's like a holding tank. So if they didn't, I'm sure it would just get too full. So I think they're just cleaning out that.
But they're
tank.
introducing that energy, like you said, into the.
Yeah.
I just wondered why they were just. I felt like they were just dumping.
Well, like
garbage into the river.
Well, and like they're allowing the nutrients and the energy that salmon has accumulated throughout its life to be put within that
Yeah. That makes
ecosystem.
sense.
And there's a lot of like marine derived nutrients, especially within the Pacific Northwest or any like stream that has a salmon run, that you can actually see. Like you can not carbon date, but like look at the isotopes within the carbon and see that marine derived carbon and nutrients actually like within the trees. So it's just like overall like increasing the overall available nutrients to the different plants, terrestrial organisms, aquatic organisms, and it's a big opportunity to bring all those available nutrients and energy from the ocean up to a higher elevation, higher in the drainage, within that like aquatic ecosystem.
Well, that's good. I understand it a little better.
Yeah.
Is that like where the bear eats the salmon, drags it up on the bank, leaves what it doesn't eat,
Yeah.
and that gets.
A lot of bears actually will just eat the skin and the eggs because
Yeah.
at a certain point when you're saying like all the flesh is kind of mushy, the most like nutrient dense parts of a salmon at that point when they're on the spawning grounds is pretty much their skin and their eggs.
And then that
There's a
gets
ton of-
introduced to the forest.
Exactly, yeah. So then that fish will decompose, those nutrients will be absorbed by the trees, the birds will have a chance, and then just again thinking about like all of the aquatic organisms, all the way down to like the bacteria, but the macroinvertebrates, the microinvertebrates, all the different caddisfly, stonefly, mayfly populations, like they're all getting that available energy and nutrients that wouldn't normally be available
There's
to them.
tons of people that actually fish for these things.
Yeah, oh yeah.
I don't know what they do with them because they're gross. But
Yeah, probably smoke them, use them as dog food.
I mean, the ones that are kind of depleted.
yeah, they just kind of dump them in the river and they're just kind of sitting there and you just snag them.
Salmon eggs.
No, they're.
I mean,
Yeah,
they
people are,
take out the
yeah.
eggs.
Oh, I don't know.
and then they can
There
cure
was
the
eggs in one
eggs
we
for
got.
like fishing.
We had to go
bait.
get one too, so.
Yeah.
Just to make sure,
Pate.
be sure it wasn't edible.
But yeah, some of the, let's see. So we were talking about gill netting. We also use minnow traps, so like a big like barrel wire trap that will again like put around the lake, will super saturate the lake, and again just like trying to target the different life history and stages of the fish population within the lake. We'll also electrofish the inlet and outlet of the lakes. So that involves applying electric voltage to the fish in the water. You can kind of vary the amount of voltage, the amount of frequency, the amount of time the machine's actually on to actually stun the fish and it can then capture them. When we're electrofishing in our fish removal streams, in our fish removal inlets and outlets of the lakes, we typically just go at a higher voltage just to, again, not necessarily stun the fish, but kill them. And again, it's a little bit easier method to go ahead and remove those fish species. So again, we're at a variety of different lakes within the park. we have been doing the effort for about 6 years, and we have seen a remarkable impact from our efforts. So LP19, one of the lakes we've been doing this fish removal effort, you can actually see a change in the amphibian behavior. So when I started here 4 years ago, they were 2 years into the actual effort. You rarely ever saw a salamander within the lake. They're all hiding underneath the logs, and were pretty nocturnal at that point. Fast forward 4 years, and we're now like, they're just all over the lake. They're swimming all throughout the water column, out in the middle of the lake, all on the shoreline. They're kind of really everywhere, and have really responded to the lack of a fish predator, and really changed their behavior and overall abundance.
Doesn't your electrofishing just kill those too?
No, so a lot of the way the different aquatic organisms, like their body morphology, will affect how they have the ability to like absorb electrical shock. Since fish are really flat facing, they have a higher surface area. They just can take less voltage compared to like a salamander, who's a little bit more sleek bodied, and aren't necessarily like set up in the same anatomy as a fish. So they will get stunned when we're electrofishing, but the voltage and the frequency is not at a lethal level. So yeah, those are kind of like the gill netting, minnow trapping, electrofishing. We do some angling when we do our non-native fish removal, but just with the like effort that you can do with gill nets, a lot of times it's depending on the lake, easier to just gill net, and you'll have a lot more success. Yeah, the Lake Allen and Marsh Lake, 2 lakes that had an illegal stocking event. We angle at those, so it just, the populations are so low that you can actually catch, like, your catch per unit effort is higher. Catch per unit effort is like how long you're using that method and how many individuals you end up catching is just higher at those lakes because of the lower population.
Who does the illegal stocking then?
We don't know. That's one of the reasons things we're trying to
Bag
figure
of
out.
fish and they go through it.
So we did get a bunch of genetic samples analyzed this winter, and we were able to eliminate the possibility of like an accidental stocking from the state or an accidental stocking from a federal agency. My understanding is they're like taking those genetic results, kind of going up the ladder and seeing how far they want to go with it. That would probably just go and looking at the different like local hatcheries and kind of seeing what stocks they have and how they compare to the stocks that we found within the lake and the stocks that they're growing. Probably the way that they would have any sort of like regulatory or like any sort of like, not fine, but way that we could combat it would be that they would like shut down their license. The state would. This again, none of this is the ball is not in our court. The ball is in the state's court. So they would be the ones pursuing that, and then they would shut them down from like a fish health or like a fish disease prevention avenue. The idea of moving different stocks from drainage to drainage. But again, anyone can go into any of these hatcheries and buy a bunch of fish, and if they want to hike it all the way up to an alpine lake and plant it there, and then there's not really much we can do to prevent that. Outreach and education is probably our best avenue for that. But yeah, kind of shifting our focus to a little bit more of our endangered species within the park. Again, Chandler had that slide talking about the Endangered Species Act. A lot of our management is affected and directed through ESA, Endangered Species Act. We have several species kind of like within the park boundaries. like I was saying, bull trout is our main one within the park system. Mount Rainier is actually a core habitat for the overall recovery of the fish species. We're kind of in the general, larger Puget Sound area, but Mount Rainier again has that critical habitat distinction. So it's an incredibly important cold water refuge for the overall health of the species. And again, we have a lot of spawning within the park boundaries. Again, those melting glaciers offer that cold, clear water refuge for bull trout. They really prefer a colder water environment and really thrive within it. We also have Puget Sound steelhead, Chinook, and coho are three other ones that are, again, kind of like on that park boundary. Their critical habitat goes up to the park boundary, but we still have to mitigate those fish species whenever doing any sort of construction projects that go along or within our river corridors. So how do we manage the bull trout within the park? Like I was mentioning earlier, we do those annual spawning surveys. Again, we're focusing on the carbon and white drainages. We do those within the fall, and that's going out to the individual clear water tributaries kind of all along the White River. So Klickitat's a really popular one, Frying Pan, Sunrise, Deadwood, Crystal, Hidden Springs, Discovery. They're all kind of just smaller tributaries. A lot of them almost no wider than this table, and you'll have these large sea-run individuals coming back and spawning in really small creeks. So it's pretty cool. The char, unlike salmon, they don't die each time they spawn, so they'll be repeat spawners. And they have several different life histories and life strategies. Some of them will just stay within the stream that they grew up in. Some of them will move up and down the drainage, mainly in the fresh water, and then some will actually move all the way up to the salt water and then come back in. There's just a couple different life strategies within that one species. So again, we're working with the Puyallup Tribe of Indians, Fish and Wildlife Service to do these spawning surveys. They also had a pit tag station within Mount Rainier. That was associated with the Mud Mountain Dam, so they were able to sample a lot of those fish that would go up in that fish ladder, and they would actually tag those fish with different acoustic tags. So then from that pit tag array, we can see what fish are returning. There were multiple arrays throughout the drainages, so we could see what fish are returning, where they're going to. If they're coming back to the same tributaries each year, if it's every other year, that kind of a thing. We didn't have the array up this year, but we've had hundreds of pit tags out. In association with that project, we also did a lot of genetic work. I know I've been talking a lot about spawning surveys and kind of do a really quick just background on what exactly we're looking for. We're looking for these things called reds, which are the equivalent of like a bird's nest, if you're thinking about fish speak. So essentially it's a gravel pit that the females will dig within the stream body, and they will partner up with a male and then deposit their eggs and spawn kind of on that area. And we go in and actually mark each individual red within the different tributaries. We'll do counts of individuals and reds, and kind of have like an overall like monitoring from year to year of how many reds we're seeing, how many individuals we're seeing by per tributary and per drainage basis. Once you get an eye for them, they like just pop right out of the river, because a lot of it is that disturbed cobble. So you are kind of just looking for the areas of disturbed cobble all the other cobble around it will be kind of covered in algae. So once you find a red, it will really pop because it will be that like clear sediment. So it's really bright sometimes. That's a pair of bull trout spawning on a red, and then I should have a video of a bull trout returning. So you can actually see how shallow that system is, or the creek is. It's only, it's probably less than a foot deep. And he's just hanging out, looking for a lady and looking for a red, and was on his way to go spawn.
Did you take that?
No, someone in Aquatics took it before me. But yeah, it's always fun to bring like a GoPro when you're doing the spawning surveys and getting some cool videos and photos. Because again, it's really really shallow stream, and they're right there. So.
And they don't die. The bull trout don't die.
No, I mean there's a chance for them to die just because spawning is such a big stressor on their on the individual, but they are a repeat spawner, so they'll spawn back each year. But it's a really energy intensive event, so some of them will die, and we have found some carcasses over the years, but most of them are all repeat spawners. And again, kind of shifting to another project that we do, which is environmental DNA and genetics. I know I've talked about it a little bit throughout the presentation, but eDNA actually stands for environmental DNA. So it's a kind of a newer tool in the terrestrial and aquatic biological world. It's a new method, and it involves filtering a set amount of water, and then from that set amount of water and filter, you can then run an analysis on that filter and see what fragments of DNA show up in the filter. So over the past 2 years, we have sampled probably over 120 stream sites, in the realm of 60 to 80 lake sites, and we have a catalog of 45 to 50 different species that we're analyzing for. A lot of them are non-native, native aquatic organisms from all the different types of fish, invertebrates, mollusks. We're also analyzing for different diseases to try and figure out the distribution of those, or the potential distribution within the park. And I would suspect we're going to get those results in maybe a year or so. It's a lot of samples, so it takes a while to run the whole analysis. But kind of from that effort, we'll have a really good potential distribution of what species are present where in the different drainages, and can have a little bit more finer scale and more up-to-date analysis of that distribution. There is kind of a little bit of a caveat of, if you do get a hit of a certain species, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's within that aquatic environment. Think of the idea of a bear, eating a brook trout, and like we were talking about with the salmon, bringing it over to another drainage. That brook trout is still going, as it decomposes, is still going to slough off DNA. So you could then get necessarily a false positive. But it's definitely a new tool and just another method to get a better understanding of what organisms are throughout the park. That was a large effort of, again, looking at the different lake systems and stream systems. And then we also have just completed 2 genetics efforts. One was looking at the Ohanapekosh drainage, and again we were looking at all the different stocks of fish species within that, so looking at the different cutthroat species and different rainbow trout species, and trying to understand if they're hybridizing at all. And we got those results back. The geneticists said that was like one of the most unique watersheds he's ever seen. We had hybridization going between the different cutthroat and the different rainbow, hybridization between the different cutthroat. So I think moral of the story, it's just one big petri dish, and will be a challenge to try and manage those different native and non-native stocks within the environment. And then our second genetics collection effort was looking at the different char species within the park. So again, that was done with the Puyallup Tribe of Indians, Fish and Wildlife Service, and us, in which we analyzed over thousands of char genetic samples, so the bull trout and the brook trout. And we were mainly looking at trying to find a drainage distinction, how much overlap between the different drainage populations there were, any potential hybridization between the brook trout and the bull trout, and trying to see kind of how the overall drainage, if there's any movement between those different populations. And those, we just got those results back, but are starting to pull together those results and write up a paper. We didn't see any sort of hybridization between the bull trout and brook trout, which is really, really good, and that was definitely one of our potential fears for having those two species in the same drainages and same areas. And then I will kind of finish off with a little bit of temperature monitoring. So again, like I was talking about earlier, how influential the glacial melt is within the basin. And again, we're like using different temperature loggers throughout the different drainages, all throughout the park. We probably have close to 40 different sites on all sorts of different sizes of tributaries, all the way from the main stem of the White and the main stem of the Carbon to a lot of those smaller spawning tributaries of different bull trout. And again, just trying to create a database that we could then create different temperature models from, but also just monitoring the overall water temperature as temperatures are warming, and kind of in the face of climate change, and seeing kind of how that is affecting the potential of those different temperatures. And again, that's done through different temperature loggers. They're taking continuous readings once every hour, and from that we can then create different statistical models and temperature models for the different drainages. And then again, kind of looking for the future. It'll be really interesting to see what those eDNA and genetic results will be, and then from that, adjusting our different management practices based on what we see from those results. We're going to continue our non-native fish removal and potentially expand our efforts to kind of that priority list of the different lakes. And then again, just continue to monitor the different aquatic populations and assets that we have in response to climate change, and then hopefully expanding our kind of citizen science and involvement in kind of further outreach to the public. So I know that was a lot of information, especially at the end. We talked a lot about things, but again, if you guys have any questions, I'm happy to answer any and all. My office is in Tobin. My door is always open, so if you want to stop by, feel free. I can put my email address if you have any other questions or follow-up resources. I'm always happy to talk fish.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Are you gonna put your email address up there?
Yes, I can.
This is the way I take notes. Oh, there's the wife.
Yeah. I'll just